We're here to talk about Infamous. It's been a minute since I talked about Infamous. I did that reaction feels like forever ago. We're gonna actually just gonna jump into it now. But the topic of today is why the karmic system works for Infamous 1 and 2, but it does not work for Second Son. So let's get into it. I got my notes right here.
It's kind of funny because aren't you a bioterrorist too?
Yeah, I'm told that hurts.
Hello, Science Center District. I lost you. Do you read me? I'm getting nothing, sir. You? Nothing outside our immediate area.
Yeah, Red. Let's go find
hell
some
is that?
prime conduits and get some new powers. We own the streets!
That's not one of the three who escaped.
Boy, have you guys got the drop on me.
So, any trouble finding the place?
I know all about what you did. Using Hank to set up the crash. Making Eugene and Fetch look like monsters to scare the shit out of the city. Also, you could swoop in and be the hero.
I did what I had to protect conduits.
Protect? You hunt them down. You lock them up. And you train them to kill.
I needed Abigail and Eugene to be monsters, because without monsters, the monster hunters go out of business.
So that's what this is all about, huh? Job security?
You almost derailed the whole operation. Luckily, you turned out to be the best thing that ever happened to me. You hear them out there? They want you. And once the world sees the head of the DUP, saving them from the biggest bioterrorist threat of the last 7 years, your death will buy my DUP at least 20 more years of funding. I'm so glad we met when we did.
Don't be.
Oh no. Are you gonna kill me now?
You're goddamn right I am.
Infamous is about 15 years old at this point, so I'm going to describe it a little bit. But essentially what it was is, the first one came out in 2009. And it was this zeitgeist of this superhero culture that had been building since really the first Blade movie came out, because the first Blade movie came out and that changed just superheroes in general. It proved to studios that superheroes could be viable, and after the first Blade movie came out, you just saw that trend of just studio after studio after studio after studio. So what they did was they just created their whole new superhero, and that was Cole. And he had lightning powers, and there's the karmic system, which was kind of like a trend at the time. And the idea was, if you do the good things, you'll take the blue path. If you do the red things, you will do the red path. This was something that I believe started with Mass Effect. And I don't know if it was Mass Effect that started it, but it was definitely the biggest game at the time, and it definitely inspired other people to follow the same thing and do the same thing. So we're sitting here in 2009, and all of a sudden this crazy high quality game comes out where this guy can shoot lightning powers. And then there's a sequel, and then it goes quiet for a few years, and then Second Son comes out. That's kind of like the overview of the series. Now, it's generally believed that the first two the karmic system worked really well for the first two Infamous games. And for the third Infamous game, Infamous Second Son, it just didn't. And now we're gonna get into that. So the karmic system, if you don't know what that is, it's a binary choice system that's like, this is the right thing, this is the wrong thing. And if you do the good path, you get blue powers. If you do the red path, you get red powers. That's kind of like the basic general overview of that.
Gonna have to get past those riot cops if we want out of here. If I fry a couple of the guards from inside the crowd, but I can trigger a riot, help keep the heat off Zeke and me. Of course, that means a lot of innocent people will get the hell kicked out of them.
Let me out, please!
But what Infamous did was it decided to shape a lot of its gameplay around the karmic system. So if you're bad, you get access to like the bad guy powers. If you're good, you get access to the good guy powers. And a lot of this was doable because Cole had one power. And that is one of the big problems between the two, is that Delsin had 4 powers and Cole had 1 with 2 games to add stuff to his arsenal. So every time you got something new, it felt really impactful and important, and it felt worth doing the bad or good playthrough because you got a completely different gameplay experience. Now, I'm not here to argue that you don't have an unique and different play styles when you do the good and bad, because you do in Second Son. But Infamous 1 and 2, they use it in a way to really customize your lightning powers in a way that they don't really do with Second Son. I wish I did the math, but if you look at like the amount of power, like good and bad powers you get just over the course of the series, and I know it's like you're comparing 2 games versus 1, but like Infamous was a sequel, and they developed their karmic system into the 3rd game, so the 3rd version of it should have been the best one. But it was arguably the worst one because it felt tacked on. And a lot of that was just because of how they did the story. In Infamous 1, there's this big monologue every single time Cole has to do this big choice. He weighs his options, and they write it in a way where each choice is believable, and that he would do these things because he weighs the pros and the cons between each one. And it's like, okay, like, where is he in the story for this? And based on that will drastically influence how you move around in the city. When you're running around, you have to like climb up to get to the point where you can like ride on rails, run on trains. You can't fly. You can't run super fast on the ground. You can glide on rails like with your lightning powers, and then eventually in Infamous 2, if you go that, I believe that, I don't remember if this is a thing that you can upgrade or if this is something that you eventually get to, but eventually you get to the point where you can like Spider-Man zip to buildings. But the reason I bring this up is because when you're evil, people will throw rocks at you when you're climbing. They'll attack you in the streets if you're bad enough. And I'm not saying they don't do this in Infamous Second Son, but in Infamous 1 and 2, your mobility is severely lessened. And so when you're actually running around and doing these things, you notice the people's like changes to you, because when you're good, they'll actually attack people on your behalf, and when you're bad, they'll throw rocks at you. And not that they don't do this in Second Son, but because Second Son focuses so much more on mobility, because everyone's jumping around, you can run around basically with absolute freedom. You can instant get to the top of buildings. And because of that, there's just not as much crowd interaction at all. Not only that, but one of the other things that you lose out on that Infamous 1 and 2 did really well was the side missions. There'd be good side missions, there'd be evil side missions, and just in general more evil and good missions. With each like major story arc, there was at least like 4 or 5 evil or good missions to go along with it that played vastly differently to the good ones. And they were good. You know what I mean? And it was this believable turn, and it also it affected just every part of the game. It wasn't just now you have red and now you have blue. And that is exactly the problem with Second Son, that is how it felt. If you look at the side missions, every single one Delsin acts the same whether you're good or bad. The only time it matters is I think there's like 4 cutscenes it affects, and each one is like, and now you make your choice, you know what I mean? And then for the bad ones, every single time, Delsin is out of character. Versus Infamous 1 and 2, where they went to really great length to justify the karmic system's existence. Versus Infamous 2, where they just said, ah, shit, we gotta do bad stuff now. And in Infamous 1 and 2, there's just so much effort into doing the good and bad missions. Because, like, there's chains of times where you get 3 or 4. And I think in the whole game of Infamous Second Son, there's like maybe 6 evil and or good missions. And they are just so disappointing. It doesn't help that there's not actually a lot of story content when it comes to Infamous Second Son. If you just play the story, just all the story missions, I think there's like maybe 20, like from start to finish. I think there's like 20 story missions, which is crazy. Another thing is the stakes. There's like never any repercussions ever for any of the choices that you make. Basically, you just get a different cutscene, you get a different dialogue chain, and then it moves on, and they pretend it didn't happen. And versus bad and good Cole changes a lot of the context of what you view the game through. It takes the time to really make every decision that Cole makes. They try to make it make sense. Versus Infamous Second Son, he just goes, I'm gonna be bad now. And I get it, it's like different themes and what they were trying to do, but like it felt very tacked on and unearned. And honestly, I almost wish they didn't do it, because just to give you an idea like what Infamous is this reluctant hero's journey to him fighting the beast to save the world. And the end of the first game, it's like saving the city, and the end of the second game, it's to save the world. And just the lead up to that moment, because you can either join the beast or fight him at the end. And if you're doing a good playthrough from the beginning to that moment, and when you're doing a bad playthrough from the beginning to that moment, it just feels so satisfying. And both of them work because they do it very slowly. And they take the time to really flesh out their villain and their story and their world. And like, if you look at the amount of missions just between Infamous 1, Infamous 2, and Infamous Second Son, look at the good missions, look at the bad missions, look at the neutral missions, and you'll see why we kind of have a problem here. Not even counting the Augustine as, like, because I don't even hate Augustine as a villain. She's just undercooked with her screen time because, yeah, I mean, stakes was a big part of it. There's not really that far-reaching of consequences, and when there is consequences, pretty much just the same thing happens either way. It just the bad version is Delsin kind of being a dick about it, and the good version just makes a whole lot more sense just the way the story is written, because the story is written for good Delsin versus the story changing to fit what you do. Because in Infamous 1 and 2, the story is based around to fit Cole and his decisions to be good or bad, and they contextualize that in a way to make his choices make sense. And for Delsin, he just completely does a 180 turn, and then he's like out of character bad just for that mission and or scene, and then the bad mission that follows alongside it. And it's just, it just makes me really sad, because it makes the bad playthrough just a chore. And like, I actually really like Delsin as a character. I think he's really fun and he's really witty and just a good time to be around. But yeah, just the amount of stakes, just the branching choices, just like in Infamous 2, you're completely locked to one additional power that you get that's good or bad. Don't get me wrong, Infamous Second Son has great characters, but the Beast was a villain, and just the amount of personalization and nuance that they gave to Cole versus Delsin is just, you know what I mean? Like, his good stuff got everything makes sense if you're doing the good playthrough, which I understand they made that first. But his bad side is just so undercooked. And yeah, if they just gave more time in the oven and really put in the love that they put into the first two games, because you could really, like, I feel like they rushed this to make this a launch title, and that might be why they took so much time on Sucker Punch, because they might have rushed Second Son a little bit. It's still one of my favorite games. I absolutely still adore that game. I think I've beaten it like 4. No, it's not 4. I think I've beaten that game like 6 times. Straight up. Wow. Yeah, I think I've beaten that. Well, it's short. Like, each, like, yeah, I think I've done 3 good playthroughs and 3 evil playthroughs. Or I've done 2, and I watched 1 with my ex one time. But the karmic system, like, Cole feels like he was made for it. Does that make sense? Like, Cole feels like he was made from the ground up for it to work for him. You know what I mean? They basically they made just a stoic, gruff 2000s protagonist. Let's be honest. Cole was kind of all right in Infamous 1. I love him to death, but he was okay. And in Infamous 2, it felt natural because he wasn't so guilty, so he didn't have to be so stoic. And it's weird because coming into Second Son, they really had the chance to show off what they could do with that system. And with the writing, it's just, it only works if you pick one side, which makes me sad because they were doing really good things with this system. And then it feels like they just made all of the worst decisions they could have made for it, and then just wrote out the game, and then just decided, okay, we're gonna sort of tweak this. Because Delsin is a good character. I think he's very fun, and I really enjoy him. But like, when you have to make your character act out of character for your binary choice system to make sense, then he fucked up. Because they were able to get it to work 2 times beforehand. Thank you guys for watching. That is why the karmic system doesn't work for Delsin, but it works for Cole. Thank you guys so much for watching, listening to my ramblings, and we'll see how this goes.